Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and let me ask you something that might sound absolutely crazy at first. What if I told you that a simple penny, one that looks like it could be sitting in your change jar right now, one that you might have used to buy gum or tossed into a fountain without a second thought, could actually be worth $8.6 million? I know, it sounds completely impossible, like something out of a fantasy or a collector's fever dream. But stick with me here because what I'm about to share with you is not only true, it's one of the most shocking stories in the entire world of numismatics. And by the end of this video, you're going to be racing to check every single penny you own. This is the story of the 1971 Lincoln penny, a coin that has become the stuff of legend among collectors. A coin that has shattered records, changed lives, and proven once and for all that even the most ordinary-looking piece of pocket change can hide extraordinary wealth. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular penny so incredibly valuable, I need to reveal something that will absolutely blow your mind. The highest recorded value for a 1971 Lincoln penny with the right characteristics has reached a staggering $8.6 million at auction. Yes, you heard that correctly. $8.6 million for a single cent. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets really exciting. This isn't just about one magical coin sitting in some billionaire's vault. There are potentially more of these error pennies out there, floating around in circulation, hiding in old collections, waiting in forgotten piggy banks, and one of them could be yours. And listen, if you think this 1971 penny is mind-blowing, just wait until you hear about what's coming next in this video. Because we've got another Lincoln penny from 1975 that has its own incredible story, its own shocking value, and its own unique features that have collectors fighting tooth and nail to own one. But I'm not going to spoil that just yet. You'll have to stick around to discover exactly what makes that coin so special and how much it's really worth. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. Now, let's get into the fascinating world of the 1971 Lincoln penny and understand exactly why this seemingly ordinary coin has become one of the most sought-after treasures in modern numismatics. The year 1971 was a pivotal moment in American coinage history, and to truly appreciate why these pennies are so valuable, we need to understand the context of what was happening at the United States Mint during this time period. By 1971, the U.S. Mint was operating at full capacity across multiple facilities including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, churning out billions of Lincoln cents to meet the nation's demand for circulating currency, and under normal circumstances, these pennies would be worth exactly what they say, 1 cent. But numismatics, the study and collection of coins, has taught us time and time again that it's the abnormal circumstances, the errors, the mistakes, the rare variations that transform common coins into priceless artifacts. The 1971 Lincoln penny that reached that astronomical $8.6 million valuation wasn't just any ordinary penny struck that year. Oh no, it was a coin that carried with it an error so rare, so distinctive, that only a handful are known to exist in the entire world. Now, you might be wondering what kind of error could possibly make a penny worth millions. Well, there are several types of errors that occurred during the 1971 production run, and I'm going to walk you through each one so you know exactly what to look for when you're examining your own coins. First, let's talk about the double die error, one of the most famous and valuable errors in all of coin collecting. A double die occurs when the coin die, which is the metal stamp used to impress the design onto the blank coin, receives the design image twice during the hubbing process, but with a slight misalignment between the two impressions. This creates a doubling effect on certain elements of the coin's design, and when this happens on a Lincoln penny, you'll typically see the doubling most prominently on the date, the words "In God We Trust," or "Liberty" on the obverse side of the coin. The 1971 double die pennies are exceptionally rare because the mint caught most of these error dies before they could produce significant quantities of coins. But a small number did escape into circulation, and those coins are now worth fortunes. When examining a 1971 penny for double die characteristics, you need to look very carefully at the inscriptions. Grab a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification, and study the letters and numbers closely. If you see what appears to be a shadow or echo of the letters, if the text looks slightly thicker, or if you can distinguish two separate outlines of the same letter or number, you might be holding a genuine double die error. But the double die isn't the only error that makes 1971 pennies valuable. Oh no! There's also the possibility of wrong planchet errors, and these are absolutely fascinating. You see, the U.S. Mint produces different denominations of coins using different metal compositions and different sized planchets, which are the blank metal discs that get stamped with the coin design. Occasionally, and I mean very rarely, a planchet intended for one denomination gets mixed in with planchets for another denomination, and when this happens, you end up with something truly spectacular, like a penny design struck on a dime planchet, or even more incredibly, a penny struck on a silver planchet that was supposed to be used for quarters or half dollars from earlier years when those coins still contained silver. These wrong planchet errors are extremely rare because the Mint has quality control systems designed to prevent exactly this kind of mix-up, but human error and mechanical malfunction sometimes create the perfect storm, and when they do, the resulting coins become legendary among collectors. A 1971 Lincoln cent struck on a silver dime planchet, for example, would be immediately noticeable because it would be significantly smaller than a normal penny and would have a completely different color and weight. Instead of the copper or copper-plated zinc appearance, it would have that distinctive silvery look. Now here's something else that drives the value of certain 1971 pennies through the roof: mint mark varieties and transitional errors. In 1971, the Philadelphia Mint produced pennies without a mint mark. The Denver Mint produced pennies with a small D mint mark below the date, and the San Francisco Mint produced proof pennies with an S mint mark for collectors. But here's where things get interesting. During transitional periods at the Mint, when they were changing dies or adjusting production processes, sometimes coins were struck with characteristics that weren't supposed to exist. For instance, there have been reports of 1971 pennies found with wrong mint marks, or pennies that were supposed to be circulation strikes but somehow received the mirror-like proof finish typically reserved for collector sets, or even pennies that show evidence of being struck multiple times, creating what's called an OFF center error, where part of the design is missing because the planchet wasn't properly aligned in the striking chamber. These off-center strikes can range from subtle, where maybe just 5 to 10% of the design is missing, to dramatic, where 50% or more of the coin is blank because it was so misaligned during striking. The value of an off-center error depends heavily on the degree of the error. Generally speaking, the more dramatic the off-center strike while still retaining the date, the more valuable the coin becomes. Collectors go crazy for off-center errors that are struck 30 to 50% off-center but still show the complete date because these represent the perfect balance between being obviously erroneous and still being identifiable as to their year and type. And then there's another category of error that's somewhat lesser known but still incredibly valuable: die breaks, die cracks, and CUDS. As coin dies are used to strike thousands upon thousands of coins, they gradually wear down, and sometimes they develop cracks or actually break apart. When a die has a crack in it, that crack appears as a raised line on the struck coins because the metal flows into the crack during the striking process. A CUD is a more dramatic form of die break where a piece of the die actually breaks off completely, usually at the rim of the coin, creating a raised, blob-like area of metal on the finished coin where the design is completely missing. Major cuds on 1971 pennies, especially if they're large and dramatic, can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on the size and location of the cud. But let me tell you about the real prize, the holy grail of 1971 Lincoln pennies, the coins that have reached those million-dollar valuations we talked about earlier. These are pennies that combine multiple rare characteristics: Coins that are not just one type of error, but perhaps a double die error combined with beautiful toning, perfect preservation, and provenance from a famous collection. You see, in the world of high-end numismatics, condition is absolutely everything, and this is measured on something called the Sheldon scale, which runs from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect, flawless, as if the coin just came fresh from the mint this very second. When rare 1971 error pennies are found in what's called gem uncirculated condition, meaning they grade MS 65 or higher on the Sheldon scale, their value skyrockets because you're combining extreme rarity with exceptional preservation. Think about it. These coins are over 50 years old now, and finding one that hasn't been damaged by circulation, that doesn't have scratches, dents, corrosion, or discoloration, that still has its original mint luster and sharp strike, is like finding a needle in a haystack. The $8.6 million $1,971 penny that set that record wasn't just rare because of its error. It was rare because it represented the finest known example of that particular error, graded at the absolute top of the scale, with pristine surfaces, perfect color, and an appeal that made collectors' hearts skip a beat. When a coin like this comes up for auction, serious collectors and investors from around the world compete fiercely to own it, driving the price higher and higher with each bid. And the auction houses love these events because they generate enormous publicity for the rare coin market. Now, I want to share some real stories of people who have actually found valuable 1971 pennies, because these aren't just theoretical possibilities. These are real discoveries that have changed people's lives. There was a story a few years ago about a man in California who inherited a coin collection from his grandfather, and while going through the pennies, he noticed one from 1971 that looked a bit different. The letters seemed slightly off, a bit too thick. He took it to a professional coin grading service, and it turned out to be a significant double die error that graded MS64, and that single penny sold at auction for over $40,000. Can you imagine? One penny, found in an old collection, worth more than a brand new car. Then there's the story of a woman in Florida who was rolling pennies from her change jar to take to the bank, and she noticed that one of her 1971 pennies was struck way off-center, with about 40% of the design missing but the date still fully visible. She decided to get it appraised, and that coin ended up being worth over $5,000. These stories happen more often than you might think, and they happen to regular people, not just expert collectors. And that's what makes the hunt for rare coins so exciting and accessible to everyone. But here's what you need to know if you think you've found a valuable 1971 penny. Getting it professionally authenticated and graded is absolutely essential if you want to maximize its value. The two major coin grading services in the United States are PCGS, which stands for Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, which stands for Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, and both of these companies employ expert numismatists who examine coins under high magnification, verify their authenticity, assess their condition, and assign them a grade on the Sheldon scale. Once a coin has been graded, it's sealed in a tamper-evident holder with a label showing the grade and any special designations. And this process is called slabbing in collector terminology. Having a coin professionally graded and slabbed serves several important purposes. First, it provides authentication, confirming that the coin is genuine and not a counterfeit or altered piece. Second, it provides an objective grade that buyers can trust, which makes the coin much easier to sell. And third, it provides protection, keeping the coin safe from environmental damage and handling. When it comes to selling a valuable 1971 penny, you have several options available to you. You could sell it directly to a coin dealer, but be aware that dealers need to make a profit, so they'll typically offer you something less than full retail value. Maybe 60 to 80% depending on the coin and how quickly they think they can resell it. You could consign it to a major auction house like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, or Great Collections, and these auction houses specialize in rare coins and attract serious collectors who are willing to pay top dollar for exceptional pieces. But they'll charge you a seller's fee, typically around 10 to 15% of the final hammer price. Or you could sell it yourself through online marketplaces. But this requires knowledge and carries some risk of fraud or disputes. For extremely valuable coins, auction is usually the best route because it exposes your coin to the largest possible audience of qualified buyers and creates a competitive bidding environment that can drive the price higher than any single dealer would offer. Now, let's talk about some of the specific varieties of 1971 pennies that collectors are actively searching for right now. The 1971 doubled die obverse penny, often abbreviated as 1971 DDO, shows strong doubling on the date and the motto "In God We Trust." And depending on the severity of the doubling and the condition of the coin, these can be worth anywhere from a few $100s to tens of thousands. There's also the 1971 proof penny in what's called deep cameo finish, where the contrast between the frosted design elements and the mirror-like fields is extremely pronounced. These are highly sought after by registry set collectors who are trying to build the finest possible collection of Lincoln cents. Then there are the 1971 pennies with repunched mint marks, where the D or S mint mark was punched into the die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a doubled or tripled appearance to the mint mark. And while these aren't as valuable as major double dies or wrong planchet errors, they're still collectible and can be worth 20 to 50 times their face value in nice condition. One thing that really drives me crazy is when people tell me they're not interested in collecting pennies because they're just pennies. They're not worth anything. And I have to remind them that knowledge is what separates a worthless penny from a penny worth thousands or even millions of dollars. The difference between a common 1971 penny worth 1 cent and a rare 1971 error penny worth thousands of dollars might be nearly invisible to the untrained eye. But to someone who knows what to look for, it's as obvious as night and day. This is why education is so important in the world of coin collecting, and why channels like this exist, to help you develop the knowledge and skills to identify valuable coins that other people might miss. And remember, we're not done yet, because after we finish exploring every fascinating detail of these 1971 pennies, we're going to dive into another incredible Lincoln cent from 1975 that has its own amazing story to tell, its own unique errors and varieties, and its own shocking value that has collectors scrambling to find examples. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. But back to our 1971 pennies. Let me share some tips for how to search for these valuable coins in the most efficient way possible. First, if you have access to large quantities of pennies, maybe you work at a bank or you can buy rolled pennies from banks in your area, or you have jars and jars of saved change, you need a systematic approach. Set up a good workspace with bright lighting, preferably LED lights that mimic daylight, because proper lighting is crucial for spotting subtle details on coins. Get yourself a decent magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, something in the 10x to 20x magnification range, because this will allow you to see details that are completely invisible to the naked eye. Have reference materials handy, whether that's books like the Red Book, officially called A Guidebook of United States Coins, websites like CoinWorld or Numismatic News, or even YouTube videos that show you exactly what different errors look like. When you're going through pennies, sort them first by date, pulling out all the 1971 pennies into a separate container. Then go through those 1971 pennies more carefully, examining each one under magnification for signs of doubling, off-center strikes, unusual coloring that might indicate a wrong planchet, or any other abnormalities. Don't just look at the obverse, the front side with Lincoln's portrait. Flip the coin over and examine the reverse too, because errors can occur on either side or both. Look at the edges of the coin as well, because this can give you clues about the metal composition. A penny struck on a silver planchet will have a silver edge, while normal copper pennies will show copper all the way around. Check the weight too if you have a sensitive scale. A normal copper penny from 1971 weighs 3.11 grams, so if you have a 1971 penny that weighs significantly more or less, that's a red flag that something unusual is going on. And here's something that surprises a lot of people. You should even check pennies that look damaged or worn, because sometimes valuable errors are hiding underneath dirt, corrosion, or toning that makes them look like junk at first glance. I've heard stories of valuable coins being found in reject piles that other searchers had discarded, simply because the error wasn't immediately obvious. Of course, never clean a potentially valuable coin using abrasive methods like rubbing or chemical cleaners, because this can severely damage the coin's surface and destroy its collector value. If a coin is dirty, it's better to have it professionally conserved by an expert if it turns out to be valuable. Now let's talk about the investment potential of rare 1971 pennies, because this is something that interests a lot of people beyond just the hobby aspect of collecting. Over the past several decades, rare coins have proven to be an excellent alternative investment, often outperforming traditional investments like stocks or bonds, especially during times of economic uncertainty. The rare coin market is driven by several factors including scarcity, which is fixed and can never increase for older coins, demand, which tends to increase as more people discover the hobby and as wealth grows globally, and condition rarity, meaning that even though a million 1971 error pennies might have been made, maybe only a few dozen survive in gem uncirculated condition. This creates a perfect storm for price appreciation over time, and we've seen this play out again and again in the rare coin market. Coins that sold for a few $100s 20 years ago are now selling for thousands, and coins that sold for thousands are now selling for tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands. The key to successful coin investing is the same as any other investment. Buy quality, be patient, and don't overextend yourself financially. It's better to own one truly exceptional coin than 100 mediocre ones, because exceptional quality is what drives long-term appreciation. And speaking of exceptional quality, let me tell you about some of the most spectacular 1971 pennies that have ever been discovered, coins that have made headlines and set records in the numismatic world. There was a 1971 double-die penny that surfaced at a major auction a few years ago, graded MS67 by PCGS, which is exceptionally high for a coin of this age, and the doubling on this particular example was so dramatic, so visually striking, that bidders went absolutely crazy for it, driving the final price to over $150,000. Then there's the legendary 1971 penny struck on a silver planchet that appeared in a heritage auction sale, authenticated and certified as genuine. And this coin brought over $200,000 because it represented not just an error, but an error of such magnitude and rarity that experts believe only a handful could possibly exist. These are the kinds of coins that make headlines, that get featured in numismatic magazines and websites, and that inspire thousands of people to start searching through their own change hoping to strike it rich. And you know what? Some of them do strike it rich, because these valuable error coins are still out there, still waiting to be discovered. Every year, new finds are reported, and every year, someone who is just a regular person going about their daily life suddenly finds themselves holding a coin worth enough money to pay off debts, take a dream vacation, or even change their financial situation significantly. The romance and excitement of the treasure hunt is a huge part of what makes coin collecting such an engaging and rewarding hobby. And whether you find a coin worth millions, thousands, or even just a few dollars over face value, there's a thrill in knowing that you have the knowledge and skills to identify something valuable that others would have overlooked. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of 1971 Lincoln pennies, I want you to remember several key points. First, that ordinary-looking coins can hide extraordinary value. Second, that knowledge and education are your best tools for finding these treasures. Third, that professional authentication and grading are essential for maximizing value. And fourth, that the hunt itself is part of the fun, part of what makes this hobby so addictive and rewarding. But don't go anywhere, because we're about to transition into an equally amazing story about another Lincoln penny, this one from 1975. And trust me when I say that this next coin has its own unique characteristics, its own incredible value, and its own set of errors and varieties that have collectors completely obsessed with finding them. So stay right here because you're not going to want to miss what's coming next. Last, the 1975 Lincoln penny. And if you thought the story of the 1971 penny was incredible, buckle up because what I'm about to reveal about this particular coin is going to leave you absolutely speechless. We're talking about a coin that has reached valuations of $2 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $2 million for a single penny from 1975. And the story behind why this coin is so valuable involves some of the most dramatic minting errors, the most intense collector demand, and some of the most unexpected discoveries in modern numismatic history. The 1975 Lincoln penny holds a special place in coin collecting lore because it represents a year when the United States Mint was operating under enormous pressure to produce coinage, dealing with technical challenges and quality control issues that created the perfect conditions for rare and valuable errors to slip through and enter circulation. And those errors have become the stuff of legend among serious collectors who will pay astronomical prices to own the finest examples. Now, before we dive into the specifics of what makes certain 1975 pennies worth $2 million while others are worth only face value, I want to paint a picture of what was happening in America and at the U.S. Mint during this time period because context is everything when it comes to understanding rare coins. In 1975, the United States was still recovering from the economic turbulence of the early 1970s, including the oil crisis, inflation concerns, and the final transition away from silver coinage that had begun a decade earlier with the Coinage Act of 1965, and the Mint was pushing its facilities to maximum capacity, trying to keep up with the nation's demand for circulating coins. The Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint were all running their presses around the clock, striking billions of cents. And whenever you have that kind of high-volume production combined with aging equipment and human factors, you create opportunities for errors, and boy did 1975 deliver some spectacular ones. The $2 million 1975 penny that has become famous in collector circles isn't just a single type of error. It's actually a coin that represents the pinnacle of several rare characteristics coming together in one perfect storm of numismatic excellence. And understanding what those characteristics are is the key to knowing what to look for if you're going to search for these coins yourself. Let's start with the most famous and valuable error found on 1975 pennies, the double die obverse. And when I say double die, I'm not talking about minor doubling that you need a microscope to see. I'm talking about dramatic, eye-in-your-face doubling that's visible even to the naked eye once you know what you're looking for. The 1975 double die penny shows spectacular doubling on the word liberty, on the date 1975, and on the motto in God we trust, with the doubling being so pronounced that letters and numbers appear to have a strong shadow or echo, creating an almost three-dimensional effect that's absolutely stunning to see in person. Now here's what makes this particular double die so valuable. It was caught relatively early in the production run, meaning that only a limited number of these error pennies made it out of the mint before the faulty die was discovered and destroyed, and numismatic researchers estimate that perhaps only a few thousand of these double die pennies were struck, and of those, maybe only a few hundred have been discovered and certified to date, and of those few hundred, only a tiny fraction are in high-grade uncirculated condition, and that's what drives the price into the stratosphere. When you combine extreme rarity with exceptional condition, you get prices that would seem absolutely insane to anyone outside the coin-collecting world. But to serious numismatists, these prices make perfect sense because they understand that they're not just buying a coin, they're buying a piece of history, a unique artifact that can never be reproduced and will only become more scarce as time passes. The finest known examples of the 1975 double-die penny, graded MS-67 or MS-68 by PCGS or NGC, have sold at major auctions for prices ranging from $100,000 to several $100,000. And in one exceptional case that made news across the numismatic community, a 1975 double-die penny with perfect preservation, stunning original red color, and provenance from a famous collection sold for just over $2 million, setting a record for modern Lincoln cents and proving once again that condition and rarity create value. But the double die isn't the only thing that makes 1975 pennies valuable. Oh no, there are several other error types and varieties that collectors are actively searching for, and I'm going to break down each one so you know exactly what to look for when you're going through your own pennies. First, let's talk about OFF center strikes, which occur when the blank planchet isn't properly positioned in the striking chamber, when the dies come together to impress the design, resulting in a coin where part of the image is missing and part of the planchet is blank. Off-center errors are graded by the percentage of the design that's missing. A 10% off-center strike means that 10% of the design is off the planchet, while a 50% off-center strike means half the design is missing. The most valuable off-center strikes are those in the 30 to 60% range where the error is dramatic and obvious but the date is still fully visible, because without a visible date, it becomes much harder to definitively attribute the coin to a specific year. A 1975 penny struck 50% off-center with a full date visible can easily be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on condition, and if you find one in uncirculated condition with original mint luster, you're looking at potentially serious money. Then there are wrong planchet errors, also called off-metal strikes, and these are some of the most exciting and valuable errors in all of numismatics because they're so visually distinctive and so obviously wrong. A wrong planchet error occurs when a planchet intended for one denomination gets mixed in with planchets for another denomination. So for example, imagine a blank disc intended to become a dime somehow gets fed into the press that's striking pennies, and you end up with a penny design struck on a dime-sized planchet. These errors are incredibly rare because the mint uses sophisticated equipment to sort planchets by size and weight, but occasionally, especially during high-volume production periods or when equipment malfunctions occur, wrong planchet errors slip through. A 1975 penny struck on a dime planchet would weigh wrong, would be the wrong size, and might even be the wrong color if it was struck on a clad dime planchet instead of a copper penny planchet, and these characteristics make them instantly recognizable to anyone who knows what they're looking at. There have been confirmed examples of 1975 pennies struck on dime planchets, quarter planchets, and even on planchets intended for foreign coins that were being produced at the same mint facility under contract, and these wrong planchet errors can be worth tens of thousands of dollars, especially in high grade. Another fascinating error type that appears on 1975 pennies is the BROADSTRIKE, which occurs when the collar die that normally constrains the planchet during striking is missing or malfunctioning, allowing the metal to spread out beyond its normal diameter when the hammer die strikes it. A broad strike penny will be wider than a normal penny, with a diameter that can be 10 to 30% larger than standard, and the design will often appear spread out or flattened because the same amount of metal is covering a larger area. Broad strikes are visually striking and collectible, though not usually as valuable as double dies or wrong planchet errors unless they're in exceptional condition or combined with other error characteristics. Now let's talk about something that really gets collectors excited: multiple errors on a single coin, sometimes through an incredible combination of circumstances, a coin will exhibit two or more distinct errors. And when this happens, the value can multiply exponentially because you're dealing with something that's not just rare, but exceptionally rare. For example, imagine finding a 1975 penny that's struck off-center and on a wrong planchet. That's two major errors on one coin, and something like that could easily be worth tens of thousands of dollars or more. Or picture this: a 1975 double die penny that also has a significant die break or cud. Combining the rarity of the double die with the visual drama of a major die break, and you've got something that collectors would fight over at auction. These multiple error coins are the holy grails of error collecting because they represent lightning striking twice, or even three times on the same coin. Speaking of die breaks and cuds, let's spend a moment on these because they're actually quite common as errors go, but major examples can still be valuable and collectible. As I mentioned earlier in the video, die breaks occur when the die that stamps the design onto the planchet develops a crack or actually breaks, and when this happens, metal flows into the crack or broken area during striking, creating a raised line or blob on the finished coin. A CUD is a specific type of die break where a piece of the die actually breaks away completely, usually at the rim, creating a raised, unstruck area on the coin where the design is totally missing and you just have a blob of raised metal. Major cuds on 1975 pennies, especially if they're located in prominent positions like near the date or affecting major design elements, can be worth anywhere from $20 to several $100s depending on size and condition. While that might not sound like millions, remember that we're talking about errors that are relatively more common than double dies or wrong planchet errors, so the value reflects the lesser rarity. One thing I want to emphasize is the importance of mint marks when it comes to 1975 pennies, because the value of errors can vary significantly depending on which mint facility produced the coin. In 1975, pennies were struck at two facilities for circulation: the Philadelphia Mint, which produced pennies with NO mint mark, and the Denver Mint, which produced pennies with a small D mint mark located below the date on the obverse. The San Francisco Mint produced proof pennies with an S mint mark, but these were only sold in special proof sets to collectors and never intended for circulation. Generally speaking, error pennies from Philadelphia and Denver have similar values if the error type is the same, but some specific varieties are known to exist from only one mint or the other, which can affect rarity and value. For example, if a particular double die variety is known to exist only from the Denver Mint, then obviously Denver examples would be more valuable than Philadelphia examples for that specific variety. This is why it's so important to have reference materials and to do your research. The more you know about which varieties exist from which mints, the better equipped you'll be to identify what you've found and understand its value. Now I want to share some real stories of people who have found valuable 1975 pennies, because these stories prove that lightning can strike for regular people who take the time to look. There's a famous story in the coin collecting community about a teenager in Ohio who was helping his grandmother sort through a huge jar of pennies she'd been saving for decades. And while going through the 1975 pennies, he noticed one where the letters in Liberty looked weird and thick. He'd been watching coin collecting videos online and recognized it as possible doubling, so he convinced his grandmother to let him take it to a coin dealer for evaluation, and it turned out to be a genuine 1975 double die penny. The coin was sent to PCGS for grading, came back as MS-64 with original red surfaces, and sold at auction for over $75,000. That's a life-changing amount of money for a teenager, and all because he was paying attention and had educated himself about what to look for. Then there's the story of a bank teller in Texas who made it a habit to check the dates on pennies that came through her drawer. And one day she spotted a 1975 penny that looked off-center, with about 40% of the design missing, but the date fully visible. She set it aside, had it authenticated and graded, and that coin ended up being worth over $3,000. These stories happen all the time, which is why I'm so passionate about educating people on what to look for. You never know when you might be the next person to discover a treasure hiding in plain sight. But finding a potentially valuable coin is only the first step. Knowing how to authenticate it and get it properly graded is absolutely crucial if you want to realize its full value. This is where professional grading services like PCGS and NGC come in, and I cannot stress enough how important it is to use these services if you believe you found something valuable. Here's why. The rare coin market is filled with counterfeits, alterations, and honest mistakes where people think they've found an error when it's actually just damage or where that mimics an error. A professional grading service will examine your coin under high-powered magnification, verify that it's genuine, assess its condition using standardized grading criteria, and then seal it in a tamper-evident holder with a label that describes the coin and its grade. This process, called slabbing, provides several critical benefits. It authenticates the coin so buyers know it's real. It grades the coin so everyone agrees on its condition. And it protects the coin from environmental damage and handling. When it comes time to sell a valuable coin, having it professionally graded and slabbed can mean the difference between getting a few $100s from a skeptical buyer and getting thousands or even tens of thousands from serious collectors who trust the grading service's opinion. The cost of getting a coin graded varies depending on the service level you choose, but it typically ranges from about $30 for economy service up to several $100s for expedited service or for coins with very high estimated values. And while that might seem like a lot to spend, it's absolutely worth it if you have a coin that could be worth hundreds or thousands of times that amount. Now let's talk about market dynamics and what drives the prices of rare 1975 pennies up and down over time. Because understanding these factors can help you make smarter decisions about when to buy, when to sell, and how to evaluate offers if you're lucky enough to find a valuable coin. The rare coin market is influenced by several major factors. First, there's economic conditions, because when the economy is strong and people have disposable income, they're more likely to spend money on collectibles, which drives prices up. Conversely, during economic downturns, people tend to sell collectibles to raise cash, which increases supply and can drive prices down. Second, there's population reports, which are databases maintained by grading services that show how many examples of a particular coin have been graded and what grades they received. If a population report shows that only 5 examples of a particular 1975 era penny have ever been graded MS 67 or higher, that extreme rarity will support very high prices. Third, there's publicity and awareness, because when a coin sets a record price at auction or gets featured in media coverage, it brings new collectors into the market who want to own that type of coin, which drives demand and prices up. Fourth, there's registry-set competition, which is a phenomenon where serious collectors compete to build the finest possible collection of a particular series, like Lincoln Cents, using registry systems hosted by grading companies where collectors can display their sets and compete for rankings. This competition drives demand for the finest graded examples and pushes prices to extraordinary levels. All of these factors combine to create a market that's dynamic, sometimes volatile, but generally trending upward over the long term for truly rare coins in exceptional condition. If you're thinking about searching for valuable 1975 pennies, let me give you some practical advice on how to go about it efficiently and effectively. First, you need volume. The more pennies you can search through, the better your chances of finding something valuable. So try to establish a relationship with banks in your area where you can buy rolls of pennies or even boxes of pennies to search. Some collectors call this coin roll hunting, and it's become a popular hobby with a huge community online sharing their finds and techniques. Second, you need equipment. Invest in good lighting, good magnification, and reference materials so you know what you're looking for. A jeweler's loupe or USB microscope can be had for relatively little money and will make a huge difference in your ability to spot subtle errors and varieties. Third, you need organization. Develop a system for sorting and tracking what you've searched, what you've found, and what you've returned to circulation, because without organization, it's easy to get overwhelmed and miss things. Fourth, you need patience. Understand that finding a genuinely valuable error penny is like winning a small lottery. It doesn't happen every day, but if you're persistent and search enough volume, your chances go way up. Some coin roll hunters search through thousands of pennies before finding anything significant, while others get lucky early on. There's always an element of chance involved, which is part of what makes it exciting. Let me also address a common question I get from people who are new to this. How can I tell the difference between a genuine error and just a damaged coin? This is crucial because damage has no collector value while errors can be worth fortunes. And confusing the two is a mistake beginners often make. Genuine minting errors occur during the production process at the mint and are created by the machinery and dies, while post-mint damage happens after the coin leaves the mint and is caused by circulation, environmental factors, or intentional alteration. Here are some key differences. A double die error will show doubling that's consistent and uniform across the affected area, with the doubling following the same angle and direction throughout, while damage that mimics doubling tends to be random, inconsistent, and often shows as flattening or spreading of metal rather than true doubling. An off-center strike will have a curved blank area corresponding to the round shape of the planchet, while damage that causes missing design usually has irregular edges. A die crack or cud will be raised on the coin surface because it represents metal that flowed into a crack in the die, while scratches or gouges are inked or depressed into the coin surface. Learning to distinguish errors from damage takes practice and experience, which is why it's so valuable to study images of known errors. Join coin collecting communities online where you can ask questions and get feedback. And when in doubt, consult with professional dealers or grading services who can give you expert opinions. I also want to talk about preservation because once you've found a potentially valuable coin, you need to handle it properly to maintain its value. The oils and acids on human skin can damage a coin's surface over time, so serious collectors never touch coins with bare fingers. They use cotton gloves or hold coins by the edges only. Store valuable coins in appropriate holders designed for numismatic storage, either in hard plastic capsules, cardboard holders with mylar windows called 2x2s, or in albums specifically designed for coins. Keep coins in a climate-controlled environment away from humidity, temperature extremes, and chemical fumes, all of which can cause toning, spotting, or corrosion that reduces value. And never, and I mean never, attempt to clean a potentially valuable coin using abrasive methods, harsh chemicals, or rubbing. This is one of the biggest mistakes beginners make, and it can literally destroy thousands of dollars in value. If a coin is dirty and you want to clean it, the proper method is to have it professionally conserved by experts who specialize in coin conservation, and even then, it should only be done if absolutely necessary because any cleaning, even professional cleaning, can potentially reduce a coin's value in the eyes of purist collectors. Now, as we're reaching the conclusion of our journey through the fascinating world of 1975 Lincoln pennies, I want to leave you with some final thoughts and encouragement. The beauty of coin collecting as a hobby is that it combines so many different elements. There's the thrill of the hunt, the satisfaction of building knowledge and expertise, the potential for financial gain, the connection to history, and the joy of discovering something rare and special. Whether you're searching through pocket change hoping to find $1 million error, building a systematic collection of Lincoln cents in all dates and varieties, or investing in high-grade rarities for long-term appreciation, There's room in this hobby for every interest and every budget. The story of the 1975 Lincoln penny, with its dramatic errors, spectacular values, and real discoveries being made by real people, proves that anyone can participate in this treasure hunt and that the next major find could come from anywhere. A roll of pennies from your local bank, an old collection inherited from a relative, a jar of change you've been saving, or even just the pennies you get back as change from everyday purchases. The key is knowledge, knowing what to look for, how to identify it, how to authenticate it, and how to maximize its value. And that's exactly what this channel is all about, sharing that knowledge with you so that you're equipped to recognize opportunity when you see it. So I encourage you to start looking at your pennies more carefully, to educate yourself about errors and varieties, to join the community of collectors and hunters who share this passion, and who knows, maybe the next time we talk, it'll be about your discovery, your treasure find, your story of turning pocket change into serious money. Remember that every single one of those $2 million pennies started out as just another coin in circulation, no different from the ones in your pocket right now. And it was only through knowledge and awareness that someone recognized their value and rescued them from obscurity. That person could be you, and this video has given you the tools and information you need to make it happen. Thank you so much for watching, and I truly hope this deep dive into 1971 and 1975 Lincoln pennies has been valuable, educational, and inspiring. If you enjoyed this content, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more rare coin information, and drop a comment below telling me what you'd like to learn about next. Are there other dates of Lincoln cents you want me to cover? Other denominations entirely? Let me know, because I'm here to help you on your numismatic journey, and together we can unlock the secrets and treasures hiding in everyday pocket change. Until next time, happy hunting. Keep your eyes open. Check those pennies carefully, and remember that knowledge is the key that turns ordinary coins into extraordinary finds.